Hey everyone, my name is Daquan Johnson. I'm an MD PhD student, and today I'm talking about 10 things I wish I knew before starting an MD PhD program. And today's video was requested by a comment on a previous video, and that's just to remind you guys, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button if you like the video, and really, I just enjoy interacting with you guys, so please send a comment, DM, and I'll try to get back to you as fast as I can. So back to the video. So my disclaimer is the fact that the things people wish they knew was going to be different for every person because our training up to this point has been very different, and also the programs that we get into are slightly different. So if you like this video, I can definitely make another one that gets input from some of my classmates and some of my friends at other institutions and other programs. But yeah, just let me know. So let's start with the first one. So number one, I wish I had known to start healthy habits early. And the reason why is because, like anything you guys know from probably from college, it's so easy to push off sleep, to push off eating healthy, to push off exercising, all of which will actually make you a much better student, because if your body feels really great, your mind will feel really great typically, and it'll make you a much better and much stronger student. And I just wish coming into medical school, coming into the program, I had already had those habits established, so it's just easier to carry forward with the momentum. Number two, it's okay to need help, and more importantly, it's okay to ask for help. And when you commit to any of these careers, whether or not you're just being a physician or a research scientist or a physician scientist, you're committing a lot of time to your craft. And that means you have a lot of time for life to happen. Things like your family can expand, it can shrink, stressors can happen, you can make mistakes. And that means it can sometimes make it difficult for you to perform as a student. So making sure you have friends and family and also keeping your program in the loop is super important, because your program can be your biggest advocate, ally, and your liaison between you and the medical school, you and the graduate school, and even sometimes your lab, helping diffuse very difficult situations. And so if you don't incorporate them into that conversation early, it can make it very difficult to kind of get out. So super important to ask for help. And I know that you all are probably high achieving students, and that you probably see asking for help as a weakness or as you're not smart enough. And that's just so far from the truth. Just ask for help when you need it, and your life will be so much easier. Number three, you are not trained as a physician scientist. And hear me out. If you look at the traditional setup of an MD PhD program, you spend 2 years in medical school, 4 years in graduate school, and 2 years back in medical school. So as a student, when you're sitting through your training, you feel like a medical student, feel like a graduate student, and then back like a medical student again. Mostly because most of your coursework and most of the things that go about your daily life are pertaining to whatever school you're in at the time. But not to say that we don't have programming within the MD PhD curriculum to help us try to integrate a little bit. So during our medical school, we may have times where we have journal clubs where we're working on reading primary literature, making sure we don't forget how to do those core things. Likewise, when we're in our graduate school training, we still have things where we're doing case presentations, talking about patients, talking about management and assessments, so we don't forget those aspects. But the traditional bench to the bedside thinking that you think of as a physician scientist isn't taught to us. And I thought that was very strange. But as I've talked to more physician scientists and seen more of them, I realized that the physician scientist as an entity is not a one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter mold, which is why they don't teach it to us, because innately, the research and clinical responsibilities of a surgeon scientist are very different than that of a medical oncologist, or very different than that of an endocrinologist. And then it's further complicated by whether or not your research is more basic or more translational, or you choose not to be an academician and you work in pharma. So the idea of a physician scientist and integrating that knowledge and integrating those skills will be very different, and you'll have them applied in a very different way depending on what you choose to do for your career. 4, just because you're a great graduate student doesn't mean you'll be a great medical student, and vice versa. The skill set and the mindset to succeed in graduate school is entirely different than what you need to succeed in medical school. So in medical school, you're required to consume, digest, and regurgitate a lot of information. So the goal is to figure out a study technique that works, that is efficient, that you can do every day, catalog all the information you're given, and that you can give it back on your multiple choice exams. So this requires the ability to pace yourself almost like a marathon, where you continue to do the same amount of work every single day so that it pays off and you're not overly stressed when you're taking exams. Graduate school is a little bit more like undergrad, coursework-wise, where we're focusing more on minutia, very specific details, some concepts thrown in there, focusing on the process. Where our exams aren't typically multiple choice, they can be anything from design an experiment for X, do something for X. What does this paper do? Describe this data, these data. So in your final for a graduate school course can be write a mock research proposal. Very different than remembering what the Philadelphia chromosome is. So therefore the mindset and the skill sets and the study habits will be very different. And yes, I did get a question about study habits, and I will be making a video on that Friday, January 10th. If you want to be notified when that video drops, subscribe, click the notification bell so you know exactly when that video drops. Number 5, the medical profession is very traditional. It's very conservative. So for many of us who are MD, PhD students and also applicants and hopefuls, we have a very strong research portfolio. And so we're very much immersed in the research space where we're pretty much knowing that it's pretty laid back. We can talk to our PIs on a first name basis. We can go to conferences and we really don't have to wear suits or ties. You can show up to a PhD interview in essentially a jeans and a t-shirt and you'll get accepted. You cannot do the same thing for medical school. You cannot do the same thing for an MD, PhD application. Because medicine is so conservative, it's so traditional, there's a cultural difference between the science aspect and the actual healthcare aspect. The professionalism is very important. So with medicine, I think that's one of the things where minority groups kind of have a disadvantage in the fact that sometimes they don't recognize that cultural difference. And so sometimes if they're not dressed the part with apparel or they act a certain way, the culture that's necessary to be in medicine, they don't get a shot because the culture of medicine is so traditional. And so as MD, PhD students, we have to understand that as trainees because the way that we behave in medical school is not the same way we behave in graduate school. Likewise, as we become practicing physicians, attendings, and PIs, we have to be able to navigate both worlds, understanding that there's a culture difference, there's a different way that we behave in different spaces, and it's going to be something that's going to be a continual part of our lives. So it's important to recognize early. Next, medicine is not the forefront of science. We often see that there's these new therapeutics and new treatments on the research side, but it takes a while to get to the medical front. Because of the nature of safety and standards of care, we often see that medicine goes from the animal trials of validity to our clinical trials, small clinical trials, slightly bigger clinical trials, safety clinical trials, and then bigger clinical trials, and then eventually being approved by the FDA or then eventually making it to the clinics. So naturally there's going to be a few years, up to a decade lag in terms of when we create new treatments and therapeutics before we're actually even able to see them being placed into the clinic. And a decade is even thinking really quickly. So medicines tend to be much further behind our science. 7, med school is hard. It's hard. And so for me personally, especially, it's been hard. I wish that I understood the true difficulty of med school for people like me who didn't have to use their memory so much in undergraduate education. So for me in undergrad, I was trained immaculately well to be a graduate student. I can figure out the proper controls. I can analyze data. I can set up an experiment very well. I know everything I need to do in terms of focusing on the details and minutia for my specific field. But for medical school, I did not have the skills to make sure that I could tackle it very efficiently starting out. still was a tough learning curve for medical school for me. And I just wish I had prepared myself mentally and also had a little bit more practice on the memory stuff so that I can actually make sure that I was more successful with the medical school part of my education. And the other thing that also threw me off is the fact that with medical school, we have many experts teaching us, and just because they're experts at their field and fantastic as clinicians, doesn't mean they're fantastic teachers of their craft. And that also means that you're teaching yourself a lot of information sometimes you don't have the background for. And so it takes a little bit more effort than you expect. Number 8, do what's best for you. And that's in all aspects in terms of studying. So making sure you don't study like your classmates. Make sure you know that you're doing whatever it takes to get your information into your head. You know how you work. You know how your brain works. Do that. Also, making sure that you are mentally and physically healthy. So do what's best for you in that case as well. Sometimes you have to take that Saturday and hang with a friend just to stay sane. Do it. Because you're the person who's going through this, you're the person who's living your life, so you have to make sure that you're healthy and you're happy. So do what's best for you. 9, your PhD doesn't have to match what you aspire to do. There are many examples in the current space where your PhD work doesn't match what you do in the future. The goal of your PhD is just to learn good science. So the most important thing you're looking for are good mentors, people who can teach you good science, people who can teach you to ask the right questions, teach you to communicate science very well in a written and a verbal manner, teaching you how to network properly. People who have an extensive network that you can plug into. Those are the important things of a PhD mentor. Yes, you do have to have an interest in the work, but it doesn't have to be exactly what you want to do. Besides, most of the time, the questions you might want to answer might be answered by the time we finish all of our training. So you have to be able to have the skill sets that even if those questions are answered, you can answer more. Number 10, enjoy the journey. No program is perfect, and it's a long time, and lots of life happens, so just enjoy the process. We have the privilege of seeing two of the most fulfilling careers in the world. Being able to affect thousands of people and also being able to see people, and sometimes they're some of their lowest and some of their happiest times. And I think that we just realize the blessing that we have by being in these programs, that you'll just enjoy the process so much more. So with that, those are the 10 things I wish I knew. Hopefully this was helpful, gave you some more insight. But let me know if you like this and you want me to do another video with some of my classmates and some of my friends at different institutions to see what they thought. Because I know for sure that they thought of different things than I did. But I think that's it for now, and I will see you in the next video.